And actually, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because I know me.
And you don't have to understand my boundaries to respect them.
Well, no, I'm the president and co-founder of McShin, a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder.
Oh, goodness. Like, okay, I gotta work on that.
Yeah.
Like,
Celebrating my 6 months. Didn't have cake.
Yeah.
gosh, you scared me.
Here we are, folks, live in Richmond, Virginia. John Shinholser with the McShin Foundation. We got a good podcast today, as they're all good, but this one really might be one of our better ones. We have an outstanding guest on today, Marci Hopkins from California, I think somewhere. Is that correct?
Actually, New Jersey.
New Jersey. You just right up the road here. Oh, my God. Anybody from New Jersey, I got to ask them, what exit you from?
Well, I live in Bergen County, so the exact you know, I should know that. I'm a Houston girl. I'm a Texas girl, and then I went to California. So really, the only exit that I pay attention to is my exit, the Jersey Shore, which is 63.
Right, there you go. My son-in-law, I think he's from exit 7. I can't remember, but I'm still trying to figure out what kind of exit it is. So I don't know what kind of son-in-law I got. He seems okay though.
I just know the street name, and I'm right. Veering off.
Well, I've been doing a little research on you. I know you recently wrote a book, Chaos to Clarity, and then I was wondering, who is this girl writing a book, Chaos to Clarity? So I read a little bit about you, the bio, and some clips, and you have a radio show, a talk show.
Yeah, I have a TV talk show.
Right, and I watched 3 of those episodes yesterday, and I was very impressed with your ability to be a great host and really extrapolate good questions and answers. And I'm thinking, well, today I'll be the hunter, and you'll be the deer in the woods. So,
right. Well, hopefully I can get some good answers.
Yeah. Well, most people already know me pretty much as an old timer in recovery. That tip of the spear with the recovery movement, not only in Virginia, but nationwide. We've been doing a lot of recovery advocacy, for a long time now. Mm-hmm. And I love it when folks come along, they get recovery and they get fired up but they do the personal work like you've done, mm-hmm. but at the same time, they're inspired to do more. So what I thought we'd do is just, briefly give us a little background on yourself, and then we'll dive into some other questions. So how'd you end up in this place?
Well, I've always worked in television, but I used to work on the network side behind the scenes. I worked in programming and on-air promotions and on-air programming. And so I left Fox Cable Group and was married and had children. And I decided around 40 years old that I wanted to get in front of the camera and go after a lifelong dream. And I started acting and doing commercial print. And I had a big decline during that time because all of my demons were coming up. My inability to have self-love, self-confidence, being in front of the camera and going into auditions is a very difficult industry or position to put yourself in, especially when you have trauma and live in a victim role. And so almost 7 years ago, I decided to put down the drink and get healthy and sober and change my life and make a difference for myself and my family. And about a year later, I started living this incredible life, and I started being guided by the divine and for my purpose. And about 4 years ago, I launched my talk show, Wake Up with Marci, about waking up your subconscious, looking to live a better life, being empowered, being inspired, giving others stories a voice to spread hope. And here I am, just about a year, 4 or 5 months ago, I launched my book, Chaos to Clarity, Seeing the Signs of Breaking the Cycles, because I wanted to continue my mission to help others and be of service.
What outside the networks in the show, what
Mhm.
is what does it look like when you're boots on the ground in your community? What's that little help look like when you're helping people
Well, my husband and I are very involved with the YMCA, YWCA,
in New Jersey?
helping, yeah, helping
Right.
different organizations, helping different families. Very important to us. We help a lot in the community. And because I was so connected within the community and I had the background that I had, I actually first started a show called Coffee with Marci, and that was a social media talk show, and that was helping entrepreneurs and nonprofits in our community, and that's really took off. And as much as I loved what I was doing, I knew that I wanted to inspire more and tell people stories of hardship and triumph to really give other people hope and help people on a much broader spectrum and bigger platform.
Now I saw where you were doing recovery advocacy work. Didn't I read that in some of the stuff here? And I thought I saw that where you were getting involved with that. Are you involved with any advocacy organizations in New Jersey or anywhere in the country for reducing the stigma associated with substance use disorders?
It's just my continued work and conversation, and this month is National Recovery Month, and I have every show is dedicated to a recovery story, whether an alcoholic addict, just to continue the help that is needed for others out there to realize that most families are affected in some way by this. And my mother was an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic, and I've been on both sides. And so I just know that it is so important that we have these conversations, and also my work in the 12-step program and what I've learned there, that is just so vital to get as much education out there to people, and hopefully if they are struggling, they will make the choice to do the same and make a change in their lives.
All right, so I don't. I mean, like I got the same sponsor for 35 years now,
Mhm,
and I got a
mhm.
home group, and I go every week, and I work with folks in the 12-step world, but also run a foundation. We got
Yeah,
145 beds, and I think we're up to 8 or 9 thousand alumni since we started. Um,
amazing.
is that you got a routine like that? Do you? I guess you go to meetings. Or you got a home group, perhaps? Maybe go regular and.
Yeah, I do still go to meetings. I do not go as I used to. I have started a lot of spiritual work and working on the 12 steps saved my life. The I mean, I learned so much about myself and was able to change the person that I was
Well, that's
and
what they
move
for, find a new
exactly.
lease on life and
Well, there's so many people that get stuck on that 3
right.
or 4, and my heart breaks because the magic is through the remainder of those
Well,
steps.
you got to get to the spiritual awakening. That's when you find the true purpose. You're able to launch in a
Exactly.
different sphere. It's funny because for decades now I've watched. I've always been a meeting maker. I've never left my roots. However,
Mm,
when I had what I thought was a true spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, that the God of my understanding was telling me, look, you can do so much more. But that doesn't mean, in me personally, I didn't want to never leave that one little spot of my life. But good Lord, by me stepping out, me and my wife, we founded this organization that is really a national brand, and everybody
mhm.
wants to be mixed in. And we've affected and touched so many people, and we've been so involved at every level. And it's like, yes, that's what they meant by having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And then I always go back to the 11th, okay, God, what is it next? You know what I mean? What's
Yeah,
your will for me? That kind of stuff. But
yeah.
as a result, we have a national recovery movement. We have recovery is hard for, just to throw a few numbers out there. Dr. McClellan, when he was a deputy drug czar, he said 86 million Americans either have addiction, they're in
Mhm.
recovery, or they're teetering on the edge. that's almost a fourth of our population.
Mhm.
And they all got families and loved ones. So we're really talking half of our population in America. This illness affects in one shape, form, or another. And 100% of the Americans that pay taxes are paying for it in one
Mhm.
shape, form, or another. That's why it's so important. I think the work that we do, and I'm sure the people you run would do, we got to get smart policies, spend the taxpayers' money wisely, and at the
Mhm.
same time, stop demonizing substance use disorders. If it's really a mental illness, treat it as such. Stop
Mhm.
criminalizing it. So I get excited when I consider you kind of a new person to the space, but when I see somebody like you really take the bull by the horn, and you got your little route you're taking. I get all motivated about that. Like, yes,
Mhm.
we have another soldier out there, another warrior
That's right.
in this
That's
space.
right. I'm
So
grateful to be that.
yeah, so how's the books going? Is it sales are good? You like it?
Yeah, it's going really well. I've gotten great feedback
You can flash
and
that book, Art. We're gonna put your book up on the screen
oh,
there.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's
Beautiful cover, by the way. I love it, man.
thank you. And the dragonfly there has big significance. One of my stories in there. And I wear my dragonfly, but the book has been doing really well and is opening up the next chapter of my life that God has put me on and the path, and that is to do public speaking, tell my story, help people even more so out there. And I am becoming involved in some of the recovery organizations that are around here, and I'm grateful for that. So every you
You
know
you you
like
feel
you
free to name drop. We have no restrictions here. You know what I mean? You can name drop. You can say whatever you like. Don't worry about any of that. The
well, there's something called the Black Poster Project. It's pretty special. I was actually just invited to one of the events couple days ago, and the Black Poster Project is children that have died from overdoses.
Oh my God,
And
we were talking about that last week. We have so many kids running around.
yeah,
Their parents have passed away, and these grandparents are raising these kids, and the neighbors and the aunts and the
yeah.
uncles, and
Well, these are the kids that have died.
oh,
And yeah, these are the children
right,
that have died of overdoses. And so they'll go into a church and they'll put a black poster in each seat with the child's face on it.
right.
And they have a ceremony and also have people tell their stories to help others. I'm also working with an organization called Big Vision out of New York City. I'm doing a big book signing October 19th at a restaurant in New York City called KYU, and it benefits Big Vision. Two women actually lost their sons to an overdose. So they have made it their mission to create a space, which is Big Vision, which is a community for young people to have safe, sober fun. And it's very hard for young people to get sober and then stay sober because the majority of people they're around and you know everything's around drinking, right?
Right.
So they are trying to create safe space for these younger people to come and have fun community times. So that's a couple of things that I'm involved in right now.
Well, let me ask a quick question. I see a lot of folks come to recovery, and keep in mind, I think, and I'm sure what I'm getting ready to say has changed a little bit because
Mm,
I hear the numbers now of people in recovery are well over 30 million.
mm,
And I do realize if you add up the two biggest 12-step fellowships in the country, I don't think they have more than a couple million people regularly going to those spots. So that's like 28 million Americans found another pathway to recovery. They're doing something different, but they have changed their life and they're doing good. And
mhm,
but drilling down on a lot of the folks we probably run with, I noticed that there are multiple pathways to recovery. But one of the big things about a 12-step pathway is the individual, it's up to them to be responsible enough to tell them their illness, tell them their disease.
yeah,
If you get that stinking thinking, you're supposed to share that with somebody.
yeah,
And I try to explain to folks, I think that is one of the exact natures of why people do reoccur with use, they,
Relapse. Yep.
yeah, they just don't want to
Yep.
tell on themselves. It's like it's
Yeah.
the shame, the
Yeah.
stigma, or whatever. And I just wonder how many people. Maybe here's the question: what can we do? I'm going to consider you an old timer, even though it's only 7 years in October. You're still an old timer to most people.
Yeah.
And what can we do different to emphasize how important that is? That these people, they got to tell on themselves to
Yeah.
prevent themselves from a reoccurrence. What are we not doing right in that area?
Well, I can talk about my story, right?
Exactly.
So in the beginning, I was uh, drinking and I was hiding my alcohol. I was starting to isolate. There were a lot of things that I was doing to hide my drinking. And I ended up getting a DUI. And for me, that was my final straw, my rock bottom, if you will, because I knew at that point I was going to lose everything. My husband, my kids, my beautiful life that I had built. And so I woke up the next morning and I admitted to myself first, because you have to admit to yourself that you're the alcoholic. And then I went and told my husband. And it was in that moment that truly the weight of the world came off my shoulders, that I no longer had to live in these lies. There's
Freedom,
so much
man. You knew you were
burden.
free, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I'm in the program, and that wasn't my first rodeo. I had been in the program, and I had gone back out because I started comparing myself, and I'm like, I'm not like them, so I'm
Right.
okay.
But the seed was planted though, so you
Yeah.
knew it was
Yeah.
there. You knew it worked.
Exactly. So
Did you go to
yeah,
treatment the last time?
I did not have to go to treatment.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, it's important that people know, though, if you do need to detox, that you go to
Right.
treatment. I thankfully was not at that place, because it wasn't like all day, every day.
So you went
But
back into rooms and trusted the rooms and the process in
at
the
that
rooms.
point, it was a complete surrender.
Right.
And it was, whatever you tell me I need to do, I'm going to do.
Well,
I'm no
good for
longer,
you. I like to
yeah,
hear that.
I'm no longer going to pretend I know better.
Right.
And
Marcy's
whatever I'm
Anonymous
doing,
wasn't a good program.
what's that?
I said Marcy's Anonymous wasn't a good
Exactly.
program.
Exactly. It wasn't working for me anymore.
Right.
And I'll tell you, prior to that time, I did relapse and I drank wine, and my husband left the house, and yeah, I'm all alone, right? So I have nobody to answer to. And so why not do it? But the
The cat's
reality is,
away, the mice will
yeah,
play, man.
the reality is I had to answer to myself, and I had to live with that. And you know what? I got up the next day and I went into a meeting. And as long, we're going to relapse, we're going to have these times, and it's so important to realize that it's just part of the journey, and that as long as you get up the next day and you do the right thing, it's gonna click. It's gonna happen for you. But if you stay in those lies and you stay in the shame,
So I
it,
think
it
step
isn't
work
going to
helps
work.
you to become a better person as far as
Hmm.
telling on yourself. You learn how
Hmm.
to trust the right people. You share that stuff with the right people. See, I think
Yeah,
I'm a step guy. I think steps are so important for folks
so
like us.
important. Yeah,
Why would you go to a circus and not go inside and watch the show? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Why would you
yeah.
go to a step program and not work the steps?
Yeah, and there's also the talk of a dry drunk, those that aren't
Right.
working the steps. And the thing there is, and what I've done through these steps is, I was sexually abused. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. Both my parents were alcoholics. And so I had what I called a victim mentality. That's another trauma response. And so I never did anything wrong. I never saw my part in anything. And so that was one of the big things as I started writing down who wronged me and started processing all of that, and telling my truth of my stories, who wronged me. I started to see the patterns and the cycles of my part.
Well, I
and
bet you
how,
was a piece
yeah,
of work as a newcomer with them ladies and your sponsor, man. Something tells me you had a reputation, man.
a
The
repu,
victim. Well, when you're newcomers in a program, when you
uh-huh.
get your first sponsor and you run with your first clique of, ladies. I'm guessing in your case, I bet you were a handful, because I know what it's like. I have 4 sisters and I'm married and I got a daughter, and it seems like there's a lot of that victimizing mentality that it's hard to overcome, and I'm relating to you in a man's way, so
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
actually complimentary. So don't always come across like that, but
Okay,
as a
yeah.
new person, I'm sure you give your sponsor the run for the money.
No, I did what my sponsor said.
Oh, you were broken then. You were good.
But before I went in that last time, the problem, and I want to talk about this because you're talking about a sponsor, and a sponsor is a very important role in the program. And, this is someone to guide you. This is someone this is an important role. But there are also those sponsors out there that they take on the role, think they're God, and that what worked for them is absolutely what would work for you. And that sometimes can be difficult. I was told my very first sponsor, like, you can't go into a room, or, because triggers are very important. These are all great things, but I don't know. Do you think that every little thing that worked for someone, or maybe they didn't have,
That's the
I don't know.
beauty. That's the beauty of the
Yeah.
variety of people. I mean, my God,
Yeah.
you get one that works for you. I mean, absolutely. We're
Right. So
on the
you
same
get one that
page.
works for you. I like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly right.
A lot of
So,
sponsors out there. If they were
yeah,
my sponsor, I would have never made it. I would have been using. You got to get the shoe that fits is the one you wear.
100%. Thank you
Yeah,
for, yeah,
yeah. I
exactly.
mean, that's one thing I love. And not only that, if you're in a bigger city, a bigger community, you like in Richmond, we have 250 AA meetings a week and 100
Hmm.
NA meetings a week. I mean, that's 350 different meetings a week. If
Yeah.
you can't find a few meetings a day you like with the kind of people you like, you know, keep coming back. Don't give up. But
Yeah. Don't give up.
yeah,
That's 100%. There's absolutely your person and your meeting out there.
yeah. Matter of fact, like there's a couple cliques in our community, and as long as I've been around, I just celebrated 40 years. I mean,
Wow.
I helped develop
You
programs
are,
here.
you did.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a couple meetings. To me, they so screwed up. They would never invite me to be a speaker at their meet. You know what I mean? So, but it's just weird how that works out. But seems to be something for everybody if you can be honest, open minded, and willing. It's hard to miss.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad of that cleared that up. So I'm assuming you went regularly for a few years, and you started finding yourself. It sounds like you did a lot of what I call inner child work, a lot of
Yes.
trauma work, and then you
Yep.
started finding your oats and your own way in life. How long did it take you from getting sober? Because
Hmm.
most newcomers still want to use in one way, shape, or form. It just doesn't like go away instantly for most people. But
No,
until you
yeah.
realize, oh my God, I may never have to use again. I really like being sober. Matter of fact, when I was new, they told me you won't ever gonna get so high, but the recovery high, there's no limit to it. How long was that period before you realized you didn't want this no more and you were liking this?
Oh, you mean to agree with others in the room that said, I'm grateful to be sober and an
Stuff
alcoholic?
like that, you started really feeling it, you know what I mean? Like, holy
Like,
smoke, they're right.
really? Yeah,
Recovery really is better than getting high.
100%. I would say for me, it was a little over a year that it started really like that, as you mentioned, and what I started feeling is that spiritual awakening, the spiritual connection, um, and life really started changing. Um, my thinking started changing. Um, so I mean, the desire to drink stopped before a year, but for me to really say, like
Like
just the full
freedom. You really were
connection.
feeling free. Like, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
what real life is about. This is what it
Yeah,
feels
but
like.
to
Was there
be
any
true.
step work process? Did you get through your fifth step or something? And all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, this is much better. I mean, can you connect it with the step? What step you were on, or
Yeah, it was after fifth, sixth step. And also for me, I know a lot of people have difficulty with the higher power and turning themselves over and what that means, and they get caught up on the word God. And but for me in the beginning, the meetings are in churches and community centers and such. And so I would go into this one at my home group. I would go into the small chapel and pray to Jesus to take the desire away and help me through this. And if so, he would forever be my shepherd. So I was
so?
raised.
Are you a churchgoer?
I was raised religious. I was raised Protestant. I did convert to Catholicism, but for me now, faith is different, and
No.
God is different for me now. I see it in a different way. It's uh, nature is a connection to God. For me, my whatever you want to call him, the divine universe,
Right.
higher power, God, whatever it is. There's no one word, but it's just a feeling, a connection. There's so many signs from the other side that I now see, and I share a lot of that in my book. Just these beautiful signs that show you that you are in the right path in life. So it's just
Yeah.
different for me now.
Yeah, our recovery center, we're in the west wing of Hatcher Memorial Baptist Church, so we got a
Hmm.
15,000 square foot recovery center surrounded
Wow.
by 15 recovery houses out here in the community. And a lot
Wow.
a lot of people say, how does that work, having a recovery center with a part of a church? And I said, well, they don't make us go to church and we don't make them go to meetings, and we have
Exactly.
mutual respect for one another. But I would bet, in my experience in the 12 step program, the folks that I've come to know and stayed in touch with, I would say over half of them sort of, gravitate towards some kind of church or religion. And the other half does just fine, it seems to me. So that's always an interesting topic,
Yeah.
what the higher power is or isn't, what church or religion. But I know
Yeah.
I'm at the age where I'm just really comfortable with anything that's about love. You know what I mean? So I do like love and acceptance, and
That's it. That's
yeah,
it. It's all starts with love, and I found self-love in those rooms. It's a
and it,
beautiful thing.
and I tell a lot of preachers, I bet I can get more people going to church than you can.
Hmm.
Doing it my way. The
Yeah.
so where you see yourself going? Where you want to be in a few years from now?
Well, I want to continue with my work and service through my platform I built, and hopefully that continues to grow, which is Wake Up with Marci, my talk show. Um,
That's
I
a lot.
think
That's a live show,
it is recorded.
right?
It's airs in New York, New Jersey, Idaho Falls, Palm Springs, LA. But it's also a podcast. It's on Hulu Live. It's on
Right.
YouTube. It's on my website. And nowadays you can see these things everywhere, not just
Right.
on
I mean,
TV.
how long were you over at Fox when you worked there?
Oh shoot! So I was probably there. Um, I worked in Houston for about 2 to 3 years. Moved to Colorado for a
Right.
couple of years, and then was in LA. Worked there for the company for a little over 5 years.
Was Laurie Dew with you when you were at Fox?
Uh,
You remember her, Laurie Dew?
no, was that Fox Cable Group?
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, that was the Fox network, the big dog. She was
yeah.
a reporter. I mean, she did the top of the hour. Laurie Dew give the news break. Anyway, she's in recovery. She's a friend of mine, and I just
Oh,
wonder
that's
if you
great.
crossed swords with her before.
No, I worked for the networks.
Yeah,
So
right.
ultimately, I was with FX Networks, on air promotions director. That was my last job before I decided to be a mom and a wife.
Right.
Yeah.
So I saw Colorado Springs. Were you in that community, or was it just Colorado?
It was Colorado, Denver.
Right, I got you. That's where I enlisted
Yeah.
in the Marine Corps, was Denver. That
Oh,
1980,
wow.
1980, that's where I was living for the moment. I mean, I traveled a little bit back then.
I bet you
So,
did.
so children, how many children you got?
I have two children. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son.
So they glad you're in recovery?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm very fortunate, John, because they were, again, this was 7 years ago.
Right.
So my son was 12, daughter around 10. They didn't see me
That
failing so
right,
much, you know. So mom did have her glass of wine, you
right,
know. Unfortunately, it's kind of normal.
right.
Moms have their wine at 5 o'clock or with dinner,
Well, they
and
must know you're in recovery, right?
oh yeah, I share everything with them now.
I mean,
Yeah, and I'm actually my daughter. I'm going to have her do some community service. I think with some of the programs
good for
that I'm
you.
getting
Good, you
involved
damn
in.
right. You so my
Yeah.
daughter's 30, and she
Uh
grew up in recovery. I mean, she
huh.
grew up with the same guy that be riding with us in the morning, taking her to school. May not be the same guy picking up when we picked her up, but
Yeah.
she's very
Yeah.
well educated about recovery. I'm really glad she got that education. And
Yeah, it's interesting because my son doesn't really drink now, and I do think it's part of him knowing that this is a genetic disease
yeah, I
also.
mean, he could
I
have the
think,
gene, man. You know, you got to
and I
warn
think
him.
there's some fear there, so
Yeah,
he stays pretty clear of alcohol. And my daughter at 16, is also very aware, and I can't say don't drink, it will ruin your life, because for every person it's different.
that's correct.
Now I'm surrounded by people that can actually drink that half a glass or one glass of wine. So,
Yeah, yeah. You leave a party, you see all these half drinks laying around. You're like, wow, these ain't the parties I went to, man. These people are
no, you
nuts.
surrounded yourself around
Right,
with
with
the
our
people that
people.
drank. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right, man. A whole different scene out there. It took
Like,
me
I
about
don't drink as much as them.
yeah, it took me about 5 years to get past that mentality, where I could go to these events and not be so focused on what they should or shouldn't be doing or what they're not doing, or
Yeah.
so that was an interesting part of my recovery.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like because my mother was an alcoholic and my father, and growing up, and my grandfather always had a drink in his hand. I mean, every day I was surrounded by alcohol from a very young age that I could be aware. And so it was normal to drink every day of my life. But what I did realize about myself is that I would always be watching what other people did. And if what I did was like what they were doing, to see if I was
Right.
okay. Yeah.
Right, I got it. Now, growing
Yeah.
up, like I know looking back, I grew up, I was full of low self-esteem, I had an
Oh, yeah.
inferior complex. Um, so recovery really allowed me a platform to find my true self and boost up my self-worth, my self-value. Like I always wanted to be somebody I wasn't. I always
Yeah.
wished I was somebody different.
Yep.
And then at some point in recovery, I can look in the mirror and say, "Wow, I'm kind of glad who you turned out to be. This ain't so bad."
Yeah.
Do you recall experiences like that? And at what point in your recovery were you able to get that self acceptance and say, you know what, Marcy's pretty cool, man. I like Marcy.
So growing up, I never knew who I was, and I was always trying to be whoever anybody else wanted me to be or who I thought they wanted me to be. With the sexual abuse, and I had a lot of abandonment issues. I lived with my grandparents for a lot of my youth, and had also physical abuse by my mom's boyfriends. She was always choosing men over me.
Mm.
So it left me in a really poor place as far as being able to love myself, understand myself, have self value. The sexual abuse, that was my stepfather. I started looking at love very differently. I thought just giving myself in a certain way or being a certain way would get me love that I was always looking for. I was just always looking to be loved. And I was always trying to be perfect, whatever perfect was, and I was always letting myself down because I was constantly failing. But it was about a year into, and that first year, there's just so much growth, especially if you buckle down and you work those steps. So much started happening towards that, almost that year mark. And I remember being in my meeting and saying, I love myself, and feeling embarrassed and shame about it. And that was on me. I know that, but I'd never said it before. I never felt it before. But I started discovering who Marci was, and I started liking the person that that I am, and became curious and realized that I had a lot to offer. I wasn't just the dumb girl that tried to look pretty so she could get attention. I had a lot to offer. Even though
You
I
had a
had a good
brain, you had a
job, and
heart, you had
yeah,
usefulness,
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
sorry.
helping the family out for a minute, how would your husband characterize your first year in recovery? Was it easy on him? Was he grateful, or was he
He
like,
was
"What the hell's
just
going
so
on?"
he was just so grateful. I mean, you can't tell anyone to get sober.
Right, but he
Uh,
supported you 100% in that first year. He made all the changes he needed to make, and life was
so
good.
that's the thing. So when I told him that I was an alcoholic, he embraced me, and it was the first time that I really felt love and realized that my husband actually loved me, because I didn't know how to love anyone. I didn't know how to receive love. I didn't really know what it looked like.
Yeah, well, you didn't feel, didn't trust, didn't talk. You had
Exactly.
the three, what tenets of a child, lost child. So
Yeah, yes. And so he kept saying, please get healthy, please get healthy. And I just was more and more resentful towards him, and I was constantly drinking at him, which was only hurting me.
right.
So once he embraced me, when I had admitted that I had a problem, um, there was just a whole shift. It was just so interesting, that shift, that I felt that love from my husband. I was now letting down my guard, all the walls that I had built. And as I was going through the program and evolving, he was evolving with me. So learning to pause, learning to communicate, learning my needs, learning boundaries, listening, and realizing that there's two people here, and we both want to be happy together, and how can we get there, and allowing us both to be able to have that space to do that and be open with one another. And again, just you can't react. You can't continue to be fighting all of the time and reacting all the time, and that's another gift that we learn in the program.
So 7 years, sober now. Now your husband's got 7 years experience with the sober Marcy.
Yes,
So how do you think he would characterize the past 7 years?
a gift,
A gift.
honestly.
So he would agree it just enhanced the relationship. He's really happy you got sober.
Oh, so happy.
Uh,
So happy.
well,
Life is completely different.
that's good to hear. Do you think women recover different than men? Like they have different challenges than men, or I mean, sure, I'm sure there's some differences.
There's got to be. We have so many differences, right? Like, I think, I don't know. I think that if you are in a relationship and you go into the program and you're both drinking and one person decides to get sober, I think that can be really difficult.
Yeah, the other person loses their drinking buddy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's you can't just change by yourself. You've got to change together. And I think that I would think, John, that it's got to be hard, because we as women, we're very emotional beings, and we let our guard down a lot. And I would think, as a man, you feel that you can't do that, but yet it's so necessary to do that in the program to heal, I would think. So I'd ask you that question.
Well, I mean, I had to surrendered to drug use day one. I can't use no matter what. And then for the rest of my recovery period, it's like pulling teeth trying to get me to share. You should have a conversation with my wife, man. You know, she'll see stuff in me, and 3 years later, I'm ready to give that one up. You know, no, I think men are the old. Well, the guys I run with is that we don't share, we don't talk either. We'd be damned if we're gonna ask somebody for help. You know, we're just not good
Yeah.
at it. You
Yeah.
know, but when we do surrender to those particular shortcomings and character defect, then it's like, why didn't I do this earlier? This is ridiculous. But that male ego, that men have, they have egos that most women probably don't have. But I know some egotistical women for sure.
Oh,
But
sure. Sure.
yeah, men are definitely, they're the hunters and the women are the gatherers. Men are
Yeah. And
from
I think,
Mars, women are from Venus. However,
yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard, especially not so much today, the way that the boys are raised, but your generation, even my husband, it's like you're not allowed to show any emotions
oh
or
no,
fail or so
and
if
and nothing leaves the family either. Everything stays behind closed
everything
doors.
stays in the family, so
That's
how
right.
can you heal anything?
That's true. Like when I grew up, all my neighborhood dads, they were all World War II veterans and
Yeah.
Korean War vets. And,
Wow.
my granddaddy was in World War One. Both of them were actually World War One
Wow.
and World War II. So it was like, it was a
Hmm.
real man's world back then. And just think
Yeah.
back, I'm a child of the 60s,
Uh-huh.
and just look at the cartoons and the comedy they had back then compared to today's. I mean, like, yes, addiction will have you change your brain to be an automatic liar, manipulator, and a lot of things. But at the same time, society was teaching our brain things too, as well. So I'm curious what these
Exactly.
kids today are 30 years down the road, what the brain's going to look like, maybe
Well,
that.
it's true. Our brains are constantly evolving, and we still have the reptilian part of our brain that we, go to sometimes just to survive. But
So
I am grateful to see today that it's normal, or it's being normalized to be sober curious, have sober fun, have all of these non-alcoholic drinks coming out. I am appreciating that shift is happening.
right, so have you been keeping up with the fentanyl epidemic?
Oh God, that is just um just heartbreaking.
You got any thoughts on some solutions, maybe, or?
Hmm.
I mean, these kids, I can't, I mean, here at McShin, we deal with some of the most severely hijacked brains. I don't know how else
Yeah.
to say. We get kids up in here, and I say kids because most of them are under my age. And the brain is like, it's so difficult just trying to get them to understand Barney manners or, look, man, you don't get it. That drug can
Yeah.
kill you,
Yeah.
and they crave it, and that's what they live for. And
Yeah.
we got there must be 1 million fentanyl addicts in America, maybe 2 million, might be 3 million at the rate they're dying.
I
You know,
know. I tell you, I just the drug epidemic, and I can't speak directly to fentanyl, but I've had people on my show and just talking about drugs and the addiction and how it does hijack the brain and the neural patterns, and the body literally cannot function. Like, it changes the way your brain works.
oh,
So
no question.
yeah, and so it's like, what is that is the solution? I don't think there's any one solution. There's multiple things that need to be done, but I think education and an understanding uh, hopefully will help somewhat.
Right. Well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I got a
Yeah.
lot more, hours read about that, But I wanted to drop back on your show because one of the shows I watched was was it the Wounded Warrior Treatment Center?
Oh, yes, yes.
Man, I love that guy. I
John, that was
told
a great,
that
yeah.
that was because that guy, every single thing he said. I watch a show and I can criticize a few things, but that fellow you had on there, he nailed every what I'll say talking point, but every answer, every comment he made is exactly one I would have made or thought of. I thought that guy was awesome in that treatment program, the way they set it up. I thought, man, every community in America needs one of those. You know,
I know.
where is that one? I didn't Google it to see where it was. Is it?
You know what? I honestly don't know exactly where it is, and that is it's actually one of the questions. Like, I wish
Right.
I would have
Was
asked
it
him.
Arizona, California, or you don't know where he was?
No, it looked like that it was kind of in a mountainous
Right.
area.
Well,
So
Arizona and California both have mountains, so.
yes, they do. I live there. Yeah, I think that it might have been, and but I don't know exactly. I know that there was only the one facility.
Right. Well, I enjoyed that
Mhm.
conversation. I thought
Yeah,
that was a really well put together model, treatment
yeah,
model, and that guy had
yeah. It
his
was
ducks in a
incredible.
row.
Yeah.
He was really good.
Hmm.
And then I got to thinking, you know, you're doing all these great recovery month talks, and I'm thinking, you know, recovery's year round. You know,
Yes, it is.
you ought to mix your show up during the course of the year too. Make sure you get plenty of recovery conversation throughout the
Oh,
year.
don't you worry, John. Everything's about mental health, wellness, recovery. It's
Right,
all in
right.
there constantly. Yeah. So even my guests in October have really great stories about tragedy coming back and shifting their mental mindsets, and
See,
that's to help other people.
yeah, I hope you become a national star and you're syndicated and you know everybody can tune in at a certain hour and watch these shows because see America needs that. You know,
I
the media's got it wrong when it comes to mental health and
I
recovery.
know. I
And
know. And
and pe-
and I am so grateful to be able to tell these stories, and I just hope that, John, I hope that happens not for me, but for the stories that need to get out there and the people that need to hear them.
yeah, and for the country, I mean, how are we gonna if we keep the same media patterns, how are we gonna change this? Because I think media has created the demonization of substance use disorders, and
Oh yeah.
therefore has restricted the growth of recovery and the openness of recovery. You know, and then I do not prescribe. I think the way the anonymity thing has sort of been the beast. I think I just don't agree with that in most cases, other than to personalize people in those meetings and keep
Hmm.
that there. But this illness, it's got to be talked about more and more and more. But talked about in solution form. You know, what
Yeah.
are these people doing? What worked for you? What's
Right.
going
What
on?
worked for you? But
Yeah.
it's not, John, it's not just putting down that drink. I mean, there's so much
Oh,
work, as you
you gotta
know.
change everything, you know
You've
what I
got to
mean?
change everything. So,
Yeah,
like, when people hear these things, I don't want them to think like, "Oh, well, one day I just got to decide to stop drinking." Like, it's that's right. That's just one
right,
little bitty part. It's then you've got to change everything about yourself and your mindset, way you think, and you become a better person and you heal. God, the healing is just incredible, and it's
right,
possible. That's the thing. It's possible.
yeah,
I mean, I never thought I'd be able to survive without alcohol because it's all I knew. That's how I coped.
right. Would you like to get more involved in some of the community work with stigma reduction with some of these percolating national organizations? I mean, would you like to get some connection to some of this stuff, or are you pretty
Oh yeah,
comfortable?
and no, and that's what's slowly happening. That's the
Right.
beauty of the evolution of sobriety, right? And life, that is just whatever path, whatever next door opens for me, and this seems to be the next door opening for me. I'm all in.
Right. Do you ever run up and down 95 any? I mean, I'm
No,
down
I
here.
don't.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Yeah, we're down here in Virginia and I always invite people to stop by, see McShin, be a guest speaker. You know, we have great programs inside jails and prisons. If folks feel comfortable going
It's
into a jail
amazing.
telling their story, you know, I'd invite you to
Mhm.
come on down and share your story. We're actually getting ready to start a whole new program. We have the green light for there's a local jail that's got a very large recovery program in it, and
Uh-huh.
they're gonna let us go in there and do a live weekly
Well,
meeting. So we bring in hope dealers from around the area, the state, and the country, and they share their experience, strength, and hope. But we'll do a live Facebook, not only so anybody can watch around the world a live meeting taking place inside a correctional environment. That's the kind of stuff we do down here. We do a lot of stuff people hadn't done before. And
I just want to say it's amazing what you do, because my mother was in and out of jail because she was getting DWIs, and that was their solution, right?
right,
And
is,
so
is she alive today?
no,
You know,
she died of alcoholism.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was one of the times that she left one of the rehab facilities and went on a bender, and then she had the last message I got from my mom is that she had gotten the invite to come back to one of the rehabs, halfway houses that she was involved with, and then she died.
How old were you?
It was 2 years ago. She just turned
Oh wow, you
70.
just lost her, so yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
grow from that
And
experience. All I can say is,
yeah,
learn from it and be a change maker. You know what I mean?
that's what I want. And then the fact that you're doing what you do, because so many addicts are out there in jail, and that's not the solution.
Well, I think on any given day, at one point, last time I saw the numbers, we had over 2 million Americans incarcerated on a daily basis in America, which 80% was substance use disorder related. And
Mhm.
I just always wondered, why in the heck don't we have rehab programs in every jail and prison? I mean, you don't
It
have to make
amazes
them
me.
go, but have them available. You,
Exactly. It amazes me that they don't, because I'd ask my mother, like, well, are you able to go to a 12 step? No, you know?
yeah, yeah, they did. They're so finicky about that stuff, and I think that's a lot of good things to say about our public safety systems, our correctional system, but there's
Mhm.
just a handful of things I'm thinking, wow, this is a no brainer. I mean, there needs to be a law almost, that
Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
hell, they got a law for everything else. Why not have a law for recovery? While you're there. So
Well,
if you
I think it shows that, I mean, let's say you're incarcerated for 5 years and you don't drink for that 5 years, and you go back out
the
and you
minute you get
drink right
out,
away
yeah, nothing
because
changed.
nothing has changed about you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello. I mean, that'd be a wake up call. So, we're winding down an hour here. It's gone by
Yeah.
very, very fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you had a magic wand, what would you do with it as far as advancing recovery for those that need it?
Mm. I Well, we've got to make recovery and rehabilitation centers available to not just those that can pay for it. And I just don't think it's right. I think that a lot of times it's just a money making industry, and it's not about the people. And
Yeah, but
I
just
think
think of all
there's
the people with no money could get here's your pass, go, you get to go. I mean, that'd be a game changer.
That's what
It,
I'm saying, is that
yeah,
it shouldn't
yeah,
be about if you can afford it or not. It's, they're not looked at as humans. It's just
right.
another money
Yeah, yeah.
making. Yeah,
Unfortunately, if you got the money, you can buy good treatment, but that good treatment should be available for anybody that really wants it and needs it. That's what I agree with.
and
Absolutely.
that's the thing, right? People are being forced to go into rehab that don't want to be there, and if you don't want to be there, you're definitely not going to get sober.
You probably won't get a good result. You might
Exactly.
get what do they call it, spin dry and kick back out. So yeah, a good healthcare system for those that need it and want it. That's a good magic wand.
And you know what? It is a disease just like other diseases. So it
Right.
needs to be it needs to be treated that way.
Yeah, I can talk for hours about the specific changes that need to take place, but I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah.
So, What's the near future look like? What, next 6 months or so? You busy with work, busy with your book?
Oh, I've got some great things with the show and doing some book signings. I've got some public speaking events that I'm going to do, and
What's your
I don't know.
specialty when you speak publicly? What's you like a hope deal? You give a good motivational talk, or is that how
Yeah,
it goes?
what I really tried to do is, tell a story, give some science behind addiction, what's happening, and then give ways for people to shift or change for themselves. Even if they're not in recovery, we all need to, not all, I won't say all, but a lot of us need to break generational cycles. We need to learn self-love. We need to move from a victim mentality. You don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict to need or want these changes in your lives. So I try to help through my book, through my public speaking, help you when you leave that room, that you are going to be able to implement some strategies and practices in your life that will hopefully make a change towards a happier life.
Oh, good for you. I remember the first time I saw them steps in 1980. I'm said to myself, man, the presidents should be watching these steps and living by these. Everybody, every decision making in America needs to know about these steps, whether they drink it or not, because it's just
Yeah.
such common sense.
Yeah, I've always said like everyone should be working these steps, but I'm more sharing about mindset and rewiring your brain because I've learned the steps to do that too. So I'm just so grateful for that, and a lot of it is what I learned in the 12-step program. And first of all, moving into gratitude. I mean, right there. You got to move into gratitude, live in gratitude for your life to change.
Well, you do strike me as a grateful person, a spiritual person, a happy person, and not only that, a person with purpose that's willing to take what you learn and share with those. So that's a good hit right there.
Thank you.
I would say your recovery journey has served you well, and I do look forward to staying in contact with your movement, so to speak. So you might have
Thank
picked up a
you.
new fan here. So
Oh, thank you. I'm a fan of yours. I love all
yeah.
that you're doing, and I tell you, maybe one day I hope to be there and see all that you're doing.
Well, if you pass through Richmond coming down
Yeah,
95, we're just a few miles off the highway, and we can certainly find a spot for you to share that hope. You know what I mean? And
thank
I'm
you.
sure we would be appreciative of it. Any closing thoughts, comments?
I just want to say if you're out there and you're struggling, first of all, you're not alone, that your past doesn't define you. Just start doing a little research, just start getting a little curious. And the greatest thing also is the 12-step program is online, Zooms. Just maybe try it out and see if it's something for you.
There's a whole lot of free content out there.
Yeah,
You can Google, and I can stay up for days Googling stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
100%.
it's been a pleasure. Just want to remind the listeners, Marci Hopkins, she wrote a book, Chaos to Clarity. It's not hard to find. You can Google Marci Hopkins or Chaos to Clarity and get hold of both. And you
Hmm.
got book signings coming up. You can go meet the author. And we're very grateful you come on today. And thank you so much for a meaningful conversation. And we will see you soon, hopefully.
Thank you so very
Uh,
much.
thank you. More later, folks. John S. We're out.